On today's Newsmakers, Christian baker Jack Phillips has been in the headlines in the courtrooms for more than a decade fighting for his religious liberty. He declined to make a same-sex wedding cake, which is what started the legal drama, but then also declined to make a cake celebrating a gender transition. He just had a major victory at the Colorado Supreme Court. He joins us to tell his story, to talk about that victory, and to share why he continues to stand up for his faith. With no further ado, here is Jack Phillips. Jack, after more than a decade in court, the Colorado Supreme Court dismissed a lawsuit against you. This is a major victory. What does it feel like right now?
It was when Jake Warner, my attorney at ADF, called me and gave me the good news. I was like, this is just great news. This is so cool. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't expect it right now, but it was good news.
Yes, it is. It is good news for you. And, give us a little bit of a backstory. I know you've shared this story many times, but not everybody knows it because this has been going on for 12 years now. And the first case involved a gay couple, a wedding cake that you had declined. But this case was about a refusal to make a cake celebrating a supposed gender transition, right?
Right. Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that at Masterpiece Cakeshop, we serve everybody, but we can't create every cake with every message that people ask us to. And in this case, the first case, the two men asked me to create a cake celebrating a same-sex wedding. To me, a wedding cake has an inherent message, and that's a message I couldn't express. In the current lawsuit, an activist attorney here in Colorado called us on the very day that the U.S. Supreme Court granted our case and asked if we could create a cake that was pink on the inside and blue on the outside. And then we were told that those colors were symbolic of celebration of changing gender. And then it became a message that I couldn't create. And we expressed to this person that we would be glad to create other cakes, custom cakes, or welcome to shop for anything that we would sell, but we couldn't create that cake because of the message.
And so that then landed you back in the courts, and this has been a constant volleying back and forth. You have been, I've interviewed you many times in the past, very calm, at least your outward appearance during all of this, speaking your faith, explaining as you just did. And I think that is important to clarify that you would serve any of these individuals who came into your bakery and wanted a cake or wanted cookie. This had to do with the specific messages you felt were being conveyed by these products. Now, John, I want to come to you for a minute because the Colorado Supreme Court dismissed the case on procedural grounds. Did the court address the First Amendment or any of the discrimination claims? Take us through a little bit of what this victory means, legally speaking.
The court did not address any of the First Amendment claims. It only dismissed based on the procedural ground, although that's enough to end the case. This particular cake request and case can't come back again. But in the meantime, we also had the U.S. Supreme Court decide the 303 creative case on behalf of our client, Lori Smith. And there, the U.S. Supreme Court made it very clear that the First Amendment broadly protects the right of all Americans to not be forced to speak messages that violate their conscience. And that's a great win for Lori. It's a great win for Jack. It's a great win for all of us, because when people are allowed to speak consistent with their conscience, everybody wins. That's the kind of freedom the First Amendment is all about.
Yeah, and so just to kind of reiterate that, in this particular case, could this individual come back again and try to refile the case under a different complaint? I guess it would have had to go to the agency, the Colorado agency, potentially. Could that happen? Is there any sort of way that this could be revived at all?
There's no way this could be revived. What the Colorado Supreme Court said was that the activist attorney should have appealed from the Colorado Civil Rights Commission and its decision to settle the case with Jack by basically dismissing all the charges. And having failed to do that, that's kind of the end of the story. So it would have to be a new request and then a new complaint and new litigation. But frankly, at this point, anything that this particular activist is asking for is just plain harassment. And Jack is more than free to turn away someone who is harassing him in his business. And it's clear that's what the activist is after, because after all, the lawyer said they'd keep making requests and taking Jack to court until he changed his beliefs or got out of business. And obviously, Jack is going to prevail and has.
Jack, what has it been like for you as a Christian and a human being dragged through the courts almost endlessly for more than a decade? This is not something you had on your bingo card, I imagine. And so what has it been like to be in the midst of this for so long?
Well, God was so gracious to us in appointing Alliance Defending Freedom to come to our aid right from the very start. Like 3 days after all the legal stuff started, I was connected with ADF, and they've been there. They've been supportive. They've been encouraging. They've helped me understand everything that's going on, and just the support from the community and from the church, and just all those things rolled together. It's been a very encouraging time, though it seems like it shouldn't. But to understand now better how our government is supposed to work, how our courts do work, and when they work correctly, it's a good thing.
You know, what drove your persistence in continuing to fight? Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people who, when faced with not just the legal battle, the media attention, which comes with, I imagine, threats and nasty messages, a lot of people would say after a year, after a month, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to buckle. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to try to find some sort of middle ground that even if I have to compromise, I don't have to deal with this. What kept you continuing and holding strong? You've held strong throughout this entire thing.
One of my favorite verses in the Bible comes from the Old Testament, 2 Chronicles 16:9, and it says that the eyes of the Lord range throughout the whole earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to Him. So, if my heart is fully committed to Him, He promises to strengthen me. He's the one who gives us the strength to be committed to Him in the first place. So it's kind of a circular thing. He strengthens us and then gives us the faith to be strengthened. So just knowing that God is in control of all these issues and I can trust Him implicitly for everything, that's pretty much what's helped keep us going.
What has been the message? And I don't want to focus too much on the negative messages, but what has been the message that you've received that has maybe disturbed you the most or bothered you the most in this? I know you get a lot of support too, a ton of support from people, but what's been maybe something you've gotten that has left you the most concerned in the midst of all this?
I think one of the things that this attorney said at one point was that this was all to correct the errors of my thinking, and that the court was okay with that. That this is about my thought processes, and that it could be changed and needed to be changed. So other than that, I can't think of anything. Everything is just, God's in control, and He's even in control of that. But that was just one thing that I thought the court can agree with that. So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we live in a country where we have a First Amendment, and it has felt very much like the First Amendment has been on trial again and again and again in recent years, and there have been major victories. John, you mentioned 303 Creative, and obviously there have been plenty of others, Joe Kennedy, we can go down the line. But John, in your view, what happens next legally from a broader 30,000-foot view perspective when it comes to these issues? Because some people might say, well, how is this case still going on after 303 Creative, right? Some people maybe don't understand the ins and the outs of this. So what do you think happens next in this battle to defend the First Amendment?
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court over the last number of years has been incredibly strong at upholding free speech and free exercise rights. And so really, it doesn't depend so much on the court system. It's been reliable when it gets to the end result. It comes down to people like Jack, who are willing to stand up for their faith, to stand up and speak the truth, and do that in the face of assaults and claims of discrimination and all kinds of other things. At ADF, our mission is to keep the doors open for the spread of the gospel. But that doesn't do anything unless people like Jack are willing to stand up and walk through that door to spread the message of the gospel. There will always be activists who try to silence people of faith who want to speak about Jesus Christ and their faith in the public square. And we're just so honored and privileged to be able to represent Jack and Lori and Barronell Stutzman and so many others who have the courage of their convictions and to stand up when the chips are down.
Yeah, it's not easy to stand up and to face the media onslaught and to face the attention and to have the entire country, talking about a case that's very personal to you, Jack. I think this has been a very interesting case to watch for more than a decade now. And John, one other question for you, and obviously it's an election year and I don't want to make this political, but I think these issues of religious liberty, one of the big questions with the Supreme Court, the debate about whether or not it should be packed with other justices. You mentioned when these cases get to the end result, the right thing happens. Do you have any fears over what could happen with the court, attempts to sway the court that could create a situation where maybe in the future cases like this don't have the kind of ending that we've seen?
That's certainly possible. All it takes is one election and that court could be packed, or justices could be forced to retire, or all kinds of other things could happen to its composition. And so that's why it's so important that everyone educate themselves about where candidates and parties stand on free speech and free exercise rights, and that they vote accordingly and talk to their neighbors about it too. But the great thing about our clients is that even if we had a Supreme Court that was not as favorable in protecting rights as it is today, I know they would still stand up because it's the right thing to do. And it's just, like I said, a huge honor and privilege to stand side by side with people like Jack Phillips.
Jack, final question for you. What is your message to the people out there who are critics, the people who don't understand, well, why couldn't you just make the cake? I mean, you've heard this argument a trillion times now. Why couldn't you just do it? What do you say to those people to help them understand, and to also not just understand that piece of it, but to really get who you are and what your heart is?
Yeah, and John was just talking about it, that, people like me or Barronell Stutzman or Laurie Smith are willing to take a stand. But Debbie and I, my wife and I, before we ever opened the cake shop, had sat down and discussed different things, what kind of cakes we would make and what the shop would look like, those kind of things. And we discussed, we're not going to create cakes for, even way back in the early 90s, same-sex weddings, and it was illegal in Colorado for same-sex couple to get married. It's in the Constitution, one man, one woman. But we had those discussions, or cakes that celebrated marijuana, or cakes that would be un-American or would denigrate or insult other people, including people who identify as LGBT. But we knew we would serve everybody, but we couldn't create every cake. So we drew those lines in the sand, and we knew that we had to stick by them. And God was gracious, and many times, to give us the opportunity to defend our stand and to back us up and to encourage us. And then again, bringing along Alliance Defending Freedom, they're just the best at doing what they do. And they're not just lawyers. They're lawyers who are passionate about keeping the doors open for the gospel, about family rights and those kind of things. And so they were so instrumental in getting us through all this. But even if they weren't there, we have to stand for what we believe, and we get what we believe from God's word, the Bible.
Well, I love that. Okay, final question, Jack. With the time you get back now that you're not spending in court or having these battles, what are you going to be doing? What's next for you?
Well, I'm still at the cake shop. I'm making cakes and cookies and brownies and serving customers the best I can, and that's something that I still love. We've been open for over 30 years, and it's I have no plans on changing any of that. We have to figure out how to celebrate this win when we get some free time, but keep doing what we're doing.
Well, very good. Yeah, once all the media interviews end, you'll have a little more time to make more of those brownies, cakes, and cookies. Jack, appreciate your time. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you, Billy. Appreciate it.
That's all for today's Newsmakers. Thank you for listening, and be sure to head on over to the CBN News YouTube channel, where you'll find daily content, videos, interviews, and news segments. All the news you need to hear. You can check that out, and you can also head on over to the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We will see you again next time.